Hello, hi, my name is Wendy Ivy Martinez. If you are new here, welcome. Welcome to my channel, or if you are a returner, welcome back. Thank you so much for clicking on another video. Today we are going to be talking about some anticipated horror and thriller book releases of 2024. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So like always, I'm going to go ahead and make sure to go in order by the day that these books are going to be released, starting off with January 2024. So on January 16th, we have This Wretched Valley by Jenny Kiefer. So in this story, we follow four ambitious climbers that basically go into the Kentucky forest. I didn't know that Kentucky had a forest. I mean, did you guys know that Kentucky had a forest? I mean, unless you live in Kentucky. I didn't know Kentucky had a forest. Anyways, we follow these four climbers as they go into this Kentucky forest, and then things go crazy. Three of those climbers end up dead, and then the fourth one just goes missing, and then people start searching for her. Now, this person that ends up going missing that isn't found dead, she's like this really famous Instagram star, okay? Like, she has Instagram followers, and pretty soon her followers are saying that they're seeing really strange lives pop up on her Instagram, even though she's missing. And this whole crazy conspiracy ensues. Like, is she the one that's killing them? Is something more sinister going on? Is it something more paranormal? And this book looks so good because it's actually inspired by a very true story of Dyatlov's Pass. So if you guys know the story of Dyatlov's Pass, it's basically these like climbers that went climbing up this like mountain where it was like snowing, and then they all like go like missing, and then they're found naked, and it's just insane, like the story, and people don't really know what went on. I personally think it was aliens, so we'll see what happens within this story. I wonder if they're gonna go in a like serial killer sort of way, or if they're gonna get into the paranormal. I'm very, very curious with what this book has to offer, and because I am so invested in the Dyatlov's Pass story, this one looks so fascinating to me, and it's gonna be a definite must read for 2024. Next, on January 16th, we have a thriller that's coming out. It's called The Fury by Alex Michaelides, and this is the author of The Silent Patient. So in this story, it has a really weird like premise. It says this is a murder, isn't it? Or a thriller, but at its core, it's a love story. And in this story, we follow a ex-movie star who is filthy rich, and every single year she invites her friends to her private island in Greece. They drink, they party, they have fun, and she's been doing it for years, and every single year that she's done it, it's been this grand old time. Until it's not, and there's a murder that happens, and nobody knows who did it. This just feels like a layered book. It has different layers, it has different depth. I hope I'm making sense. It looks interesting, okay? I haven't read anything by this author, but I might read The Silent Patient before I decide to pick this one up, just to see if I'm even invested in his writing. If I saw this at the bookstore, I'd probably just grab it because of the cover. It's gorgeous. The next book is a horror, and it is called Midnight on Beacon Street by Emily Ruth Verona. And this one is coming out on January 30th, 2024. Now, this story looks really good. First of all, I am a sucker for covers that look very like 80s and like 90s-ish. And that gives me that sort of retro vibe, which makes sense because this has taken place in the 90s, I believe. Yes, it's taken place in 1993, October 1993. So in this story, we follow a babysitter, okay? And this babysitter, she's babysitting two kids. She's babysitting a 6-year-old boy, Ben, I believe, and then she's babysitting a 12-year-old girl. And our main character, the babysitter, she has a general anxiety disorder. So she copes with her anxiety by watching horror movies. So she's watching these horror movies while babysitting these kids to sort of cope with her anxiety. And when all of a sudden there is a knock on the door and there's mysterious phone calls and there's a stranger that shows up at the door, there's unexpected visitors. By midnight, little Ben, the little 6-year-old boy, is found in the kitchen with a body at his feet. There's a murder that happened. And it just looks so good. Okay, we have the classic babysitter style type of book that we would get a lot in the 90s, but make it horror. Cannot wait to check this one out. And I really enjoy how the babysitter has anxiety disorder. I like how that's being represented, because I watched another video where a girl was talking about this book, and she was talking about how, yes, a lot of times we get anxious characters in stories, especially in horror novels and thrillers, but not really too many main characters that is specified to have this general anxiety disorder. So it's really awesome that we're seeing that representation as well. And I'm excited for this. Okay, well, let me know if you guys are going to be checking this one out. The next book that we're going to talk about is another horror novel, and it is called The House of Last Resort by Christopher Golden, and this comes out on January 30th. Now, this story has that classic, this is a huge house, it's too good to be true sort of thing going on. We have a young couple that sees this house that's on top of the hill in Italy, and it is being sold for a dirt cheap price. So this couple's like, we'll take it, right? When obviously, if it seems too good to be true, it usually is. It usually is. And that's exactly the case that happens with this house. Now, this house ends up having a very, very dark history. It was owned by a Catholic priest, or it was a church or some sort of things, but this Catholic priest is doing some really dark and disturbing stuff in this house, and something seems to still be there. It looks really, really good. I love when religion is thrown into horror books or just any sort of book in general, just because I feel like it's a topic that's very interesting to me. Even though I'm not a religious person, I grew up with a very religious family. And so to be able to have that dialogue and that talk about, you know, the dark side of religion, it's something that's very fascinating to me in books, that we're actually discussing the dark side of these religions now. The next book that we have comes out March 19th, and it is called The Woods All Black by Lee Mandelo. Now, this is a horror story that takes place in the 1920s. And in this story, we follow this town, and we follow this character that is a tomboy. And obviously in the 1920s, that's not something that was very common, or something that was very, I guess, it was very frowned upon back then, we should say. And so this town is questioning this tomboyish character, and they really want to do something about it. This has obviously maybe talk about like gender identity and that going on in the 1920s, and I just feel like that's a very important conversation that we should be having. I'm very excited for this. I'm very excited to check this out. I wonder how the horror is going to come into play. I wonder if it's going to have any sort of paranormal element to it, or if it's just plain going to be the horrible things that humans do, because that very well might be what happens. Now, the next book that I want to talk about comes out on April 2nd, and it is another horror book, and it is called This Skin Was Once Mine and Other Disturbances by Eric LaRocca. And this is the author of Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke. This won a Bram Stoker Splatterpunk Award, and I'm excited for this one. We have a collection of short stories that are obviously horror-based and that are on the claustrophobic side. So if you have claustrophobia, this might be something that is right up your alley if you want something that's really going to irk you and like rub you the wrong way. I haven't read Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke, but it is something that I have had my eye on, and splatterpunk always seems to be a genre that I really do want to dive into, even though I haven't quite yet. So I might check this one out. Let me know if you guys will be checking this one out as well. On April 9th, we have another horror book that is coming out, and it is called Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes. And this is the author of Dead Silence. Yes, Dead Silence. So Dead Silence is a book that I have had on my TBR since it came out, practically, and it is a horror slash sci-fi sort of genre. So in this story, we have a space station that is occupied when suddenly it is deserted. Like everybody just leaves it and it's completely empty and nobody knows why. Like it was a perfectly good functionable space station. So they end up sending out more astronauts to occupy this space station for them to figure out what happened. Why did people leave so abruptly? Where did they go? What happened here? When there is a sudden murder on the way to this space station. So we have that sort of like thriller element, but we have a horror element to it because we don't know exactly what happened at this space station. So it sounds very intriguing. You have a thriller, you have mystery, you have horror. It seems really good, okay? And it's a sci-fi horror, which tells me it may possibly just have aliens. And I mean, who doesn't like aliens? Who doesn't like aliens? Next, on April 16th, we have Immortal Pleasures by V. Castro. Now, this is a story about these two Aztec women that have been wronged, right? So they end up coming back hundreds of years later as vampires. So their Aztec stuff was taken from them by all these people. You know, they want to put them in museums, and like they were their treasures and all that stuff was taken from them. So these two girls want to get revenge. These two women want to get revenge, and now they're vampires, and they go after the people that stole all their Aztec things. And it just seems really interesting to me. I heard that it has like a feminist element to it. This is the author of The Haunting of Alejandra that I believe did really, really well. So yes, yes. Next, on May 14th, we have The House That Horror Built by Christina Henry that wrote Near the Bone. Now, in this story, we follow our main character. She is a single mother and she needs a job, okay? And she's desperate to just take anything but at this point. And our main character is also a huge horror movie fan. Like, she loves horror movies. So she is so thrilled to the roof when she ends up getting a job working for this ex-horror filmmaker. He used to make a lot of horror movies in the past, but he no longer does them. And she cleans his house. Now, nobody knows why he stopped making movies. Apparently there was this whole incident behind it. There's a whole conspiracy, but nobody really knows. And when she's cleaning his house, he has sort of like a don't ask, don't tell sort of policy. So she tries ignoring all these questions until she feels like she hears somebody calling for help from the basement. And then that's when she's like, okay, what is going on here? This book looks really good. It's a horror, but it gives me very like thriller vibes. I would say it's more thriller than horror. It might just be horror because it's a horror movie guy. I like the fact that it's a single mom, so I may just be picking this one up. The last book that I'm going to be talking about comes out not until June, and it is called Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. So Middle of the Night, this is basically about a little boy that ends up going camping with his friend. Like he wants to like go sleep outside in a tent with his friend for the night. And they're little. So they end up doing this and they're having a grand old time when they go to sleep, and then the little boy wakes up and his friend isn't there. Like he's just gone. And on the tent, there's marks as if it was cut through with a knife. Now, years later, he is an adult and he still is haunted by what happened to his friend. People are saying that they see his friend. His friend might just very well be alive. And this basically sets off our main character into like this frenzy where he starts to remember things that he didn't from when he was little, things that were blocked off in the past, and he becomes absolutely obsessed with trying to find his long lost friend and what exactly happened to him. This book looks really good. It's Riley Sager. Riley Sager had some hits and misses. I've only read 2 books by him. One was phenomenal, and that's Home After Dark or Home Before Dark. And then we had The Miss, which was Final Girls. Couldn't get past that one. So we will see where this one ends up falling on that spectrum. But it's a Riley Sager, so maybe. Anyways, you guys, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!